This
with
conference
tools
will now be
that help
recorded.
navigate and demystify the SAT and ACT process. Also to share relevant SAT and ACT information as it relates to the COVID-19 pandemic. We will also provide test-taking strategies and examples of these relevant to the SAT and ACT. All participant lines will be muted throughout the conference. However, you will be able to use the chat function to ask questions, post comments, and receive assistance for technical support. It may be helpful to have a pen and paper handy to be used during the practice exercises. And participants will be provided SAT and ACT exercises during this webinar and sites where you can go to get further help. Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated is an international Greek letter nonprofit organization. We were founded January 15, 1908 on the campus of Howard University. There are currently nearly over 300,000 members worldwide. We currently have a program theme of exemplifying excellence through sustainable service. And in that program theme, one of the targets is HBCU, which is Historically Black Colleges and University, and College Admissions Program, which we will refer to as #CAP. This is to promote HBCU attendance for high school students and assist them through the college admissions process. This webinar is put on by 5 Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority chapters, and these are the members of the planning committee representing each chapter. Next slide. The upcoming #CAP webinars are listed here. We want you to go ahead and register for these programs. You can register as soon as this webinar is over this evening. Spots fill up quickly, so we want you to have the opportunity to get a spot into each webinar. The upcoming webinar that's next is college funding and scholarship strategies to graduate debt-free. And that can be very helpful since many of us have finished college with over hundreds of thousands of debt. Next slide. The agenda for this evening is listed here. We're going to introduce the facilitators, give you general information on the SAT and ACT, along with tips and strategies for taking both. We will have a question and answer period, and then a wrap-up session where we talk about future webinars and the survey that we would like for you to take. Our facilitators this evening are Mrs. Fanny Chambliss Bullock and Mrs. Lakita James. Mrs. Fanny Chambliss Bullock is a native of Montgomery, Alabama. She graduated with a BS in biology and a chemistry minor from Alabama State University, a master's in public administration with a concentration in financial management from Troy State University. She retired in 2015 as a senior auditor from the Department of Defense and currently serves as comptroller at the Calvary Evangelical Baptist Church in Portsmouth, Virginia. She has been a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated for over 42 years. She has served in numerous capacities as president, vice president, treasurer, global impact, membership, rituals, and is currently serving as Gamma Delta Omega Chapter's #CAP Committee Chairman. She believes that it is her duty to assist students in their effort to attend college. One of her favorite quotes is, "Education is the most powerful weapon we can use to change the world. Let's welcome Mrs. Fannie Bullock. Mrs. Lakita James, a native of Portsmouth, Virginia, is the current treasurer of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Gamma Delta Omega Chapter, Portsmouth, Virginia. Lakita has worked as the Chief Financial Officer of Healing Word Fellowship Church for the past 4 years. She also worked as the Program Director of the Word Academy Christian School for 4 years and an elementary school teacher with Norfolk Public Schools for 9 years. She earned a bachelor's degree in elementary education from Norfolk State University, an MBA in accountancy from the University of Phoenix, and is currently a doctoral candidate in the field of educational leadership and curriculum instruction, where she is slated to complete her program in the upcoming weeks. Lakita enjoys spending quality time with her family and friends, and a great priority of hers is to ensure she displays godly character in all that she does. Lakita has a great passion to help students learn and become successful, and that they are aware how to be financially stable. So at this time, I would like to turn the floor over to Mrs. Fannie Bullock with SAT Skills Review.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining the SAT ACT webinar this evening. The purpose of this webinar is to provide you with a glimpse of some of the strategies for the SAT and ACT. This webinar is designed to stress the importance of adequately preparing to take the test. We will begin this webinar this evening with general information for the SAT and ACT. We used the book College Planning Strategies, I Wish Someone Had Told Me by Dr. Kristen Murray as the resource for this information. The SAT, ACT. Let's talk SAT, Scholastic Assessment Test versus the American College Testing. Some general differences go along with that. The SAT versus ACT both measure what you're learning in school and what you need to know to be successful in college. More colleges are making these tests optional, and they're weighing essays and academics as being weighed a little heavier. But you also may need the SAT, even though your college might not require it. You might need it for scholarships. The SAT tests include a reading, writing, and language, 2 math tests, the no calculator portion and the calculator portion, and an optional essay test. The ACT includes English, 1 math section, and you can use your calculator, reading, science, and optional writing tests. Our recommendation, take both tests early. And eligible students can register for a fee waiver from their guidance counselor. And you should send your SAT scores and your ACT scores to your top 5 schools. How are the SAT and ACT scores used? For college admissions, merit scholarship, and NCAA eligibility. That's a National Collegiate Athletic Association. And that association is dedicated to the well-being and lifelong success of college athletes. Now let's look at some of the more recent COVID-19 implications. Universities have a latitude to revise and change their admission process during the COVID pandemic. So many colleges are making the SAT and ACT tests optional for admission. So when those scores are optional, other factors are weighed more heavily. Colleges may not favor students who took the test over those who did not. So every student is compared to students at the same school to admissions for a fair context. So if you're going to Norfolk State University, all the students will be compared together. And so to find out what college testing requirements are on, you can go to those two websites, www.fairtestorg.org, www.common.app.org. So plan to take the test anyway for merit scholarships. SAT, some of the more recent changes, the SAT provided weekend administration, SAT administration every month through the end of December 2020, beginning in August. And the SAT is providing a digital SAT for home use. The ACT is offering its new individual section retest option and online testing, which gives you faster results this fall. It's also offering remote proctoring at your home or on a computer throughout remote process proctoring. ACT is reporting results as early as 2 business days after the test date for online testing. Multiple choice scores and the ACT composite scores. So the only thing they would have to be grading would be your essay. Note the cost of both of the tests are about the same. We recommend that you request your test questions and answer score sheet so that will help you if you have to take the test again or just know where your strengths and weaknesses lie. It's an additional cost, but it's well worth it in the long run. And also, if you're eligible to get a fee waiver, check with your guidance counselor. The upcoming test date, SAT test dates, you can go to the website to make sure that these dates are up to date. We tried to do as much as we could. So all these dates are there. If you're a junior, you might want to start looking at the dates farther out. But if you're a senior, you need to look as soon as you possibly can to do SAT. And then the ACT, the first test is going to be sometime September the 12th. So if you're a senior, you need to be taking that test as soon as possible. Now, how to register for the SAT? What we found in the past is that a lot of students don't know how to register for this test. So what you should do register for the SAT, you go to www.collegeboard.org. Now ACT, www.actstudent.org. It takes about 20 to 30 minutes to set up. Make sure you have a computer, your credit card payment, and your high school code and courses. And you need a headshot photo along with the colleges that you plan to send them to. So take your time before you register, because once you get your scores, you want to send them, you can send them up to so many schools, and that way you don't have to redo that. So right now, before we start off, I'm going to say, are you planning to take the ACT or the SAT? If you put it in the chat so we can see it. All right, so Maya saying she's taking the ACT. Someone said, Tia said SAT. So this is great. A lot of people are saying both. SAT, Cameron, thank you. Joshua say he's taking both. That is a very good option, because we're learning that if you take both, they both have different things to offer. So you'll find that out. Thank you so much. This evening, the strategies for the SAT, we're using the Princeton Review, cracking the SAT 2020 edition. This book provides clear, concise, and easy to understand strategies. And when we say strategies, you'll understand what I mean as we go through the test. Let's talk about the SAT. The SAT consists of 4 timed tests: reading, writing and language, math, no calculator, math with a calculator, and an optional essay. The reading test is multiple choice. The writing and language is multiple choice. The math test, no calculator, is multiple choice and grid in. The math test and calculator with the calculator, multiple choice and grid ins, and an optional essay, 50 minutes. We'll talk about all of these. So on the SAT, there is no penalty for guessing. There's no penalty for guessing. So always guess on multiple choice, even if it's at random. But there's a strategy to guessing. First, you need to eliminate which questions are wrong by process of elimination. So we will go through that in a few minutes. So you'll be able to, if you can eliminate one or two answers, the chances of you guessing the right answer is better. So try to chip away at the incorrect answers without taking a long time to do it. Now, a lot of people say, one of the other things we're recommending is that you use a letter of the day. So me on a letter of a day, it depends on my day. Some days my letter of the day is A, some days it's B. You have to do what's best for you. Now don't choose your letter of the day if you know that answer is incorrect. So I guess you need a letter of the day and then a backup letter of the day. Pace yourself, slow down, and score more. So you're not scored on how many questions you complete, you're scored on how many questions you get correct. Embrace your personal order of difficulty. Some things are easier for you to do. That means do those and then come back to the hard stuff. Okay? Let's talk about the reading. Now, the reading test is 52 questions in 65 minutes. That's like 80 seconds per question. I don't know about you, but 80 seconds can be kind of short. So your scores on the reading and writing and language tests together comprise your evidence-based reading and writing score on the SAT. The test is 65 minutes long and you have 52 questions. And all of those questions come from passage-based and multiple choice. So the main goal of the reading test is to measure your ability to understand words in context, as well as find and analyze evidence. Read only what you need for the answer. Back in the day, they told us to read everything before you answer the question. You don't want to do that on the SAT because your 65 minutes will probably be up. The 5-step basic approach. So the main goal is to read the blurb. Now, and I'm going to show you an example of a blurb, and that's a little short introduction at the beginning of a passage. So then you select and understand the question. Do it in order if possible, because sometimes one question can help you get to the next question. Read only what you need. If it tells you to go to line 12, just go to line 12. Predict the correct answers from the text. Find a phrase or a sentence in the text that helps you with your prediction. Use the process of elimination. Eliminating puts you closer to the correct answer. So I'm going to run through some examples real quick of what you're going to encounter as you're in the reading section of the SAT. A blurb. So the blurb says something like, this passage is an excerpt from Zora Neale Hurston's 1937 book, Their Eyes Were Watching God. This blurb gives you an idea that the passage relates to literature. The main idea is the central theme of the passage. Words in context, as used in line 15, common most likely means. It's kind of giving you the process of how to know what they're looking for at the end of the question. The author purpose. The author most likely mentions America in line 22. So it's taking you to the line so you'll know exactly where to go. Line reference in line 12, pitting occurs mostly in what area? So, and then when it gets to the graph, according to the graph, what percentage of college graduates in Sweden go on to pursue master's degrees? So now we're going to do some exercises. So everybody get ready in the chat, and I know you have your little paper. So read the blurb and post your answer in the chat. Now you're going to get 85 seconds to do this because, and I know, sorry, Kanisha, I told you 80 seconds, but it's 85 seconds. We will make sure it's 85 seconds. So everybody will get 85 seconds. So read the blurb and answer the question. And we'll be back in 85 seconds. As soon as you know the answer, you can start putting them in the chat. All right. Charles, D,
Time is up.
time's up. All right. So let's understand the question. The question says the main passage of the purpose. Passage. Read only what you need. So everybody put in that it was D. Read only what you need. So listen. The passage was adapted from How the Web Affects Memory, copyrighted in 2011 by Harvard Magazine Incorporated. Now, just from basically reading that little passage at the top that I have in blue, I already know that they're talking about the web and memory. So, most of you chose D, but the D is incorrect. The answer is C. Discuss the ideas that humans' capacity for memory is much weaker than it once was. Now, did you read the whole passage or did you just read that highlighted portion? Can someone put in their whole or just how they got their answer? Okay, you read the whole thing. All right, the answer is C. We'll go back to that in a minute. So, the reading test can be very tricky. The reading test can be a little tricky because it's asking you to read and base it on what's in the. We didn't talk about, I know you chose D, share the findings of a study and the effects of the computer use of the on memory recall. This passage specifically says how the web affects memory. So then I would just go with memory because memory was in there and not try to make it something different. And that's what we want you to see tonight. So let's go on and look at the writing and language test. And you have to remember that I don't have a chance to do in-depth going through the process. I'm kind of giving you some ideas so you'll know as we go on. The writing and language test is about 80 seconds per question, 44 multiple choice questions that are based on the passages. So instead of asking you to analyze a passage, you to proofread and edit. Can you hear me now? I lost power for a second. Okay, let's go with, look at each answer choice. So what's Y'all the answer. What's changing in what's changing? I wasn't supposed to show you a B, C, and D. Can you put it in the chat? The apostrophes are changing all throughout this. And what does that mean that the question is testing? It's testing, what is it testing? Apostrophes and where they go. Next drill. Look at the answer choices. What's changing? Look at what's going on in this one. Y'all did, does, have, done. They're verbs. And what is this question testing? It's testing verb tense and numbers. So let's do the writing and language question. Read and put your both answers in the chat. So this would be 80 seconds for both of these questions. So you're going to try to answer the questions for number 1 and number 2.
Time is up.
All right. So the first question is you're looking for if this word is the correct word or not, protagonist. And the answer is protagonist is D. Thanks everybody who got it. I saw everybody in there. I was like, yes, they are smart. There's some smart kids on the line. To think is A, no change. So you see how you have to read and go straight to the line and kind of read around. Don't read the whole paragraph because you're wasting time. All right, let's move on to math strategies. There are only 6 arithmetic operations tested on the SAT: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, exponents, and square roots. These operations must be performed in the proper order. You all already know this, all these high school students, PEMDAS, beginning with the operations inside of the parentheses, and use the distributive law whenever possible. This is usually enough to find the answer. And so I won't explain distributive law unless someone posted that they don't know what it is. And you must know how to add, subtract, multiply, divide, fractions, and use your calculator in the sections that is permitted. All right, let's go into the section. Most of the questions on the math test are multiple choice, and there are a handful of student-produced answers where you have to put grid-in questions. And I'll show you how to do a grid-in really quick. But instead of choosing your answer, you have to work through the problem and then answer your problem by bubbling in the appropriate numbers. The math test covers 4 main content areas: algebra, problem solving, data analysis, passport to advanced math, and additional topics in math. The math test is divided into 2 sections. And so let's work some exercises in exercise number 1. So do question 1 and 2 if you can, and put the answers in the chat box. And you have, I'm sorry, hold on, wait a second. You have, I'm going to give you 1 minute to do both. Brandon, all right, he's fast. Thank you, Brandon. Treasure, thank you. Samaya, good job. Charles, yeah, you guys are smart. All right, let's get to question 2. So I know you know the answer. Brianna, Jordan, Butler, Kaya, go ahead. I see you.
Time is up.
The minute is up. Nobody answered question 2. Give them. I'm gonna give you 30 more seconds to do question 2. Brandon is in again. All right. Kaya, Sanaya.
Time is up.
All right. Okay, let's work through these really quick. So you start out with the equation at the top, 10 plus 2 in parentheses x minus 7. So 10 plus 2x minus 14, 10 plus 2x minus 14 minus 10. What you're trying to do is get them on the equations on both sides. I know you all know this. 2x equal to 4 is 2x minus 4 is the answer, which is D. Everybody got that? All right, so in the math no calculator section, I see everybody put in A, and then Brandon went back and said 2 is actually B, because that's one of those questions where I want you to understand that you might not need the calculator to calculate the answer, but you might need it when you're working real fast, because the calculator can help you with adding and subtracting during the test. Not so much as to work the problem, but to make sure you're on the right point once you start getting large numbers. So let's go. 8 times 1,000, it's 8,000. And then you divide 8,000 over the 160 milliliters. 50 is the answer. And 50 is the answer. So you don't need the calculator in the calculator section always to help you solve it, but you can use it for addition and subtraction. Let's do this gradient problem. Now I'm going to give you 70 seconds to do this. If A plus 2 is equal to 6 and B plus 3 is equal to 21, what is the value of B divided by A? Let's go. We're going to give you 70 seconds to complete. All right. So Charles, can you put in there why you put your answer in a fraction mode versus, okay. Can you put in the in the chat room why you put it in fraction format versus working it out?
Time is up.
All right, let's solve for A. I'm waiting on Charles or someone to put their answer why they chose the fraction versus working it out. A plus 2 is equal to 6. Solving for A is equal to 4. B plus 3 equals 21. B equals 18. So what do? They didn't ask you to reduce it to the lowest fraction. They asked you what's the value. So you're trying to get through the questions. You might not have time to do all that. So let's just put in what you got. So what is the value of B over A? 18 over 4. 18 divided by 4. So then you go to the little grid in and you put your 18. You see that little division thing at the top? You shade that in and you put it over 4. Sometimes what happens is you try to do too much. Just read what the question asks you and just do that and grid that in. Yes, it's probably is 4.5, but that's not what you need. You could finish that and be gone to the next question. Okay? No, the 4.5 would not be considered incorrect. What it would do is your answer is there. So you can have that answer, but you've wasted probably another 4 or 5 seconds doing that when you could be on to the next problem. You don't need to reduce it unless it asks you to solve for a specific number. All right. So let me go back before I go forward. So here's the secret on the math test. You don't have to answer every question in each section unless you're aiming for a top score. You should intentionally skip some of those harder questions in the section. Most students can raise their math scores by just concentrating on the correctly answering the questions that they answer that they find easy and medium. In other words, slow down, spend your time working carefully on the most straightforward ones. Know that your calculators are permitted but not required. Take your calculator to the test. It can be helpful as long as you know how to use it. And remember, I told you how you're going to use your calculator by adding, subtracting, dividing large numbers that might throw you off track if you're trying to do it by hand. For the harder questions, use the process of elimination to avoid getting trapped answers and trying to narrow down your choices. Practice eliminating bad answer choices. So the only way you're going to understand what I'm saying is you got to practice, practice, practice. You just don't want to walk in off the street and take the SAT. You don't want to walk in off the street and take the ACT. You want to have practice so you can have some of these strategies in your brain. So when you go in, you're confident that you're putting your best job forward. The SAT, on the SAT, the final test is the essay portion. It's about 50 minutes. And so how many of you plan to take the essay portion of the test? That will help me determine how much information you need. If you can just put yes or Y or something in there. Yes, okay, great. So I see everybody that's great because some schools require the SAT, the essay, and some don't. But if you opt out of taking the essay portion and then you later find out you need it, you know you got to retake the entire SAT for the essay portion. So we suggest that you go ahead and take the essay test unless you know for sure it's not required. And the other thing about it is, even if you don't take it, if you not required, writing the essay can make your college application really look more attractive. Your score will appear with every score that you send to college, and they'll look and see that you took the initiative to write the essay, which is a good thing. We're going to open it up for questions later on. So I'm going to pass the torch on over to Mrs. James, who will continue with the ACT strategies.
Hello, everyone. I am Lakita James, and I will be working through the ACT test strategies with you. Now, on the ACT, you can increase your score by working smarter and not harder, and you all are already experienced with this because of the strategies that you use on your assessments in school. Okay, so the ACT is very similar to the SAT that Miss Fanny has just worked with you with strategies. All right, so here we go. The ACT. So the ACT has 4 multiple choice time tests. The English test, which is 45 minutes and you have 75 questions to answer. The math test, 60 minutes with 60 questions. So you have like 1 minute per question on the math test. The reading test, 35 minutes and 40 questions. The science test, 40 minutes, 40 questions. And then you have the optional writing test, which you are allotted 40 minutes to write the essay. Next slide. Okay. ACT strategies. So this is a timed test. So you want to make sure that you pace yourself on the test. In pacing yourself, just like Miss Fanny shared on about the SAT, you want to choose your personal order of difficulty. And so if you begin running out of time, you want to run out of time on questions that are harder and not the easy questions. So you want to go ahead and answer as many questions that you can right offhand, and then save the harder ones for later. Even if you don't get an opportunity to work a question, that doesn't mean don't answer it. There is no penalty for wrong answers on the ACT, so you should not leave any blanks on your answer document. When time is running out, use your process of elimination. If you don't have enough time to use process of elimination, just as Ms. Fanny shared earlier, choose your letter of the day, pick your 2 favorite letter combinations of answers and stick to them. If you're consistent, you're more likely to pick up more points just from being consistent. All right, next slide. What to expect on the English test. The English test is not a grammar test. It's also not a test of how well you write. It's a test to test your editing skills, your ability to fix grammar and punctuation, and your ability to improve organization and style. And there's really no order of difficulty of the passages or the question. All right, so let's talk about how to crack this section of the ACT. I encourage you to focus on the 4 C's. The 4 C's are are complete, consistent, clear, and concise. Good writing should be in complete sentences. Everything should be consistent and the meaning should be very clear. And when you choose your answer should be free of any errors, which makes your answer concise. Okay, so let's practice one. Next slide. All right, we have this question. It says, Nigerian author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie is highly acclaimed for her novels, short stories, and essays. Okay, so we're going to work through the strategies of how to answer these questions. All right, so first thing we have to do is identify the topic. All right, so get ready because I'm going to be asking you all to post your responses in the chat section. So let's look at the answer choices. When we're looking at the answer choices, do any of the words change here? No. All right, so in the chat section, post, what do you see is changing? What do you see changing? Okay, you guys are just really smart. I see you posting the answers already. So good job. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Cassandra. I see that you posted commas. Okay, yes, treasure, commas. The commas is what's changing. All right, so that must be the topic of this question. So we're looking at commas. So the first thing you always want to do is identify the topic of the question first. Pay attention to what's changing in the answer choices versus what stays the same. All right, the second thing that we're going to look for is we're going to use the process of elimination. Okay, and in just a moment you'll see some clicks coming up so you can follow along with me. Okay, there we go. We've identified the topic already, and now step 2, process of elimination. So to go from good to great on the English test, you can't just fix a question in your head. You have to find an answer that matches what the question is asking you. And so instead, after you have identified what's wrong, you're going to eliminate. So let's look at the commas. Let's go through each answer choice and we're going to eliminate. And I thank you all for going ahead and posting what the answer is, but let's go through it. Okay, so let's look at A. It says no change. So should we leave the comma behind a DJ? Is that necessary? In the chat, tell me yes or no. Is it necessary to have that comma after a DJ? Okay, I see a lot of you are saying yes. And sometimes in our informal way of speaking, we do take a pause after there, and sometimes we do put a comma there, but formally the comma is not necessary after a DJ. Okay, so with that being said, we can eliminate A and we can eliminate D. Okay, so that leaves us with B and C. Okay, so with B, we see that there's a comma after the word author. Now, post in the chat really quick if we need to keep that comma after author. Type yes or no if you think we need to keep that comma there. Okay, I see most of you are saying yes, and thank you so much for posting, but it's actually no, you don't need that comma there. We do not need to separate the word author from the author's name. And so that would mean that the letter B is incorrect and the letter C with no commas is the correct answer, okay? So without using the process of elimination, you could have chosen the wrong answer. And it's okay if you did not choose the right answer, because what we want to show you is that even though you have learned these objectives in school, to perform well on a test of this capacity, it will require you to do some practice with an SAT or ACT prep. And so at the end, we're going to share more resources that will lead you through more practice with these type of questions, okay? All right, so let's go on to the next slide. We have one more to practice. Okay, here it says, French bulldogs can face a serious number of health issues affecting the respiratory system, knees, and eyesight. All right, step 1 is to identify the topic. Okay, so let's look at the question. It says the best placement for the underlined word would be. And so what this question is asking us to look at is the placement of the underlined word serious. Okay, and so in the answer choices, the question has given us different scenarios of where we could place the word serious. And what we have to do is go through each of them and identify which one would be best. Okay, all right, so I'm going to be asking you in a few moments to post something in the chat, but follow along with me. Okay, so step 2 would be use the process of elimination. Okay, in just a moment, you're going to see some information come up on the slide and you'll be able to follow along with me. Okay, so we see their best placement is underlined. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take each answer choice and we're going to use the word serious and we're going to place it where it's asking us to place it. Okay, so the first one says A, where it is now. So in the chat, type yes or no if you think that the word serious is okay where it is now. Okay, I see some no's. Yes, okay. And I see some of you have already gone ahead and answered it. Thank you, good job. Okay, that is correct. So we will eliminate A. Okay, let's look at B. Before the word French. Type in the chat yes or no if you think the word serious would work in front of the word French. So it will read, serious French bulldogs can face a number of health issues. Okay, that is correct. No, that is not the best placement for that word. So we'll eliminate B. Okay, let's look at C. Before the word health. You all are doing an awesome job. All right, type in the chat yes or no. Okay, I see a lot of yeses. Awesome. Okay, so we won't eliminate that one yet. And let's look at D. Before the word respiratory. So it will read, French bulldogs can face a number of health issues affecting the serious respiratory system, knees, and eyesight. All right, I see that you all have said no. Awesome job. So we can eliminate D. And you all were correct when you post the answer. The answer is C. All right. So when we're working on the English test, we want to make sure that you think about how you will use words formally. So we want to think about the formal language that we will use in a professional setting and not the informal way that we will use words with our friends. Okay. All right. So also in this section, make sure that you look and understand what the question is asking you and pay close attention to any underlined, any highlighted words, because that's most likely where your questions are going to come from. Also, if you see no change in the answer choice, no change is a legitimate answer choice. So the answer can be no change, as we saw on the question before. And be sure that the answers you choose are complete, consistent, clear, and concise. All right, so next slide. All right, so the second section of the sorry. Okay, so I forgot that I put this in here. So on the English test, here are some common areas that you will see on the test. You will be tested on punctuation, verbs, subject-verb agreement, pronouns, frequently confused words, orders of sentences, and orders of paragraphs. So I encourage you, even if you don't choose the review Princeton review that we're sharing, I encourage you to please choose a review to go through so that you can have great practice to score your best on this section of the ACT. All right, next slide. All right, so the second section of the ACT will always be the math test. To perform your best on the math test, you'll need to become very familiar with how the questions are structured and strategies to use on the math test. The best recommended calculator for this assessment is the TI-83. And so the difference between the ACT and the SAT is that you can use the calculator on the entire section of the math test, but you don't want to use the calculator to the point where it alters your view on how to approach the questions. It's there and available if you need it. All right, so on the math test, you'll have 60 minutes to answer 60 multiple choice questions. Next slide. All right, here's a breakdown of how the math test is broken into sections. You'll have number and quantity, algebra, functions, geometry, statistics and probability, integrating essential skills, and modeling. And here's an example of how many questions you will find in each section. Next slide. Okay, our first example for the math test exercises. Okay, so I want you to follow along with me in this. I don't want you to post the answers yet. I'm going to ask you some questions, and so I'll tell you when to respond in the chat section. Okay, so let's look at our question. Step 1 to answering math test. Step 1 is You'll see it pop up in just a second. Know the question. So let's look at the question. How many of the members chose to plant trees? Okay, so be sure to identify specifically what the question is so you'll know how to approach the answers. So we're looking at how many of the members chose to plant trees. Okay, step 2, highlight the key points. All right, each member in a club had to choose an activity for a day of volunteer work. We see that the key points are highlighted. 1/3 of the members chose to pick up trash. 1/4 of the remaining members chose to paint fences. 5/6 of the remaining members still without tasks chose to clean up school buses. The rest of the members chose to plant trees. If the club has 36 members, how many of the members chose to plant trees? Okay. All right. So step 3 is to work the problem and use the process of elimination. And so that's what you all are going to help me do now. All right. So our starting point to make this problem much easier, because you see that there's a lot of components to this, is we're going to look for what number is going to lead us through this problem. And if we see here, the question identifies that there are 36 members in this club. All right, so we're going to use the number 36 to help us identify the value of each fraction here. Okay, so we've got where we're going to start, and that's 36 members. All right, so the first portion says 1/3 of the members chose to pick up trash. And so we're looking for 1/3 of 36 members. Okay, quickly in the chat, can you please let me know how many, what is 1/3 of 36? Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Treasure. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Jordan. You all are awesome. Okay, so 1/3 of members, 1/3 of the members is 12. Okay, so there are 36 members and 12 of them are picking up trash. So that leaves us with 24 members. Okay, so now the next part says 1/4 of the remaining members chose to paint fences. So now we're looking for what is 1/4 of 24. And you all are doing an awesome job. So in the chat, please let me know what is 1/4 of 24. Excellent, excellent, excellent. That's 6. Okay, so what does that tell us? That 6 members paint fences. All right, the next step is 5. What is, so 5/6 of the remaining members still without tasks chose to clean buses. So there were 24 members in the last step, but 6 of them chose to paint fences. So that leaves us with 18 members. So what is 5/6 of 18? Post that in the chat. That is awesome, you all. So that is 15. So the rest of the members chose to, so 15 members are painting school buses. The rest of the members chose to plant trees. So there were 18 members left over, and 15 of them clean the school buses. So how many are left? How many are left? Great job, Wendy, Sophia, Treasure. Awesome. So three are left. So what is our answer? Post your answer in the chat. F. Awesome. And a lot of you have already told me it was F, but I wanted you to see how even though a problem may have a lot of components, if you identify what the question is asking you, work through it real quick, step by step, it will ensure that you get the right answer. And you all did an awesome job working through that with me. So let's practice one more on the next slide. All right, so here's a different approach. We're going to work with a graph on this, for this example. So the step 1 for when you have a graph or figure is to read it. Okay, step 1 is to read it. So you see we've highlighted the portions that you need to read. You need to look at what is being measured. So you look at the values, and all of that is highlighted. Okay, step 2 is to know the question. The question asks, between which 2 months was the change in total rainfall the greatest? All right, so step 3, highlight the key points. All right, so the key points we're looking for between which 2 months. Another key word there is change, and then which the rainfall is the greatest. So we have 3 things that we're looking for here. All right, step 4, work the problem and use process of elimination. All right, so let's go through really quick. I don't want you to post the answer yet because I want you to pay close attention to how the graphs can be a little bit tricky. All right, so let's look at each answer choice, and then what we'll do is determine what's the difference between each one and then use the process of elimination. Okay, so let's look at letter A, May and June. What's the difference between May or June? Put that in the chat. What's the difference in the rainfall between May and June? Using the graph. Great, excellent. That's 3. Okay, so in just a moment, you'll see 3 pop up. Okay, now let's look at June and July. What's the difference between June and July? Awesome. Okay, what's the difference between July and August?
George used to be.
Okay, what's the difference between August and September? You all are doing an awesome job. Okay, now, so, and the last one, September and October. What's the difference between September and October? All right, awesome. So now what I want you to do is, using the process of elimination, go ahead and post in the chat, what's the answer? We're looking for between which 2 months was the change in total rainfall the greatest? Tia, Wendy, Jordan, Treasure, awesome job. Yes, and then we can eliminate those, and then our answer would be D. You all are correct. And so on the math test, it will require a lot of practice, but I encourage you to please use some of the resources that we'll share with you at the end so that you can get lots of practice, and so that you can ensure that your score is, that you earn the best possible score on the math section. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the ACT reading test always comes third. Reading is a challenge on a time test because everyone doesn't read at the same pace. And so to maximize your score on the reading test, you need to use your strategies and learn how to use your time wisely. You also use your letter of the day, and it's imperative that you read, that anytime you have a graph or a chart in the reading test, that you read all the information around it. Next slide. What to expect on the reading test. So what you should expect is 40 questions, and you have 35 minutes to answer them. You'll have 4 passages. Your first passage will be a prose fiction, or another name for it is a literary narrative. And so this passage could be an excerpt from a novel or a short story. The second passage you'll have is social science. These topics will be covered from archaeology to biology, business, and so many more. The third passage will be from humanities. So this passage will be nonfiction, but it usually is memoirs or personal essays. The fourth passage will be natural science, and this will come from the content areas of anatomy, astronomy, biology, or chemistry. On your reading test, you want to be sure that you use your personal order of difficulty. You can do this by taking a quick glance at the passages and determining which ones will be easier based on the type of passages they are, which ones will be easier for you to answer. Those are the ones you want to kind of cater most of your time to. Okay, next slide. All right, the most efficient way to boost your reading score is to pick your order of passages, and you also use the 6-step approach. So step 1 will be to preview. Read the blurbs and the maps and the questions. Step 2, work the passages. Up front, go ahead and read about 2 or 3 minutes in 2, and that will determine, that will give you enough information to go ahead and start answering the questions. Step 3, select and understand your question. Be sure to use your personal order of difficulty to choose the questions and determine what the question is asking. Step 4, read what you need. Most questions require about 5 to 10 lines from the passages. Step 5, choose an answer. Predict the answer based on the information that you've read from the passage. And step 6, use your process of elimination. It can be, if you can clearly identify what the answer is in the passage, go ahead and look for the answer and then cross off any answer choices that don't fit to give you an opportunity to choose the best answer quickly. On the reading test, be sure to pace yourself and allow the questions to guide you through the reading. So you want to let the questions guide you and not the passages guide you, so that you have enough time to answer as many questions as possible. Okay, next slide. The ACT science test always comes after the reading. So this is not a test of science facts. To maximize your score on the science test, you need to work the passages in your personal order of difficulty. Pace yourself and be sure to use your letter of the day. Next slide. Okay, what to expect on the science test. You'll expect to have 6 passages, 40 questions, and 35 minutes to answer those questions. The passages will be about science topics, and you also need to be familiar with looking up data within a passage, making predictions, and also synthesizing information using your prior knowledge and what you already know. You also want to use your personal order of difficulty to ensure you answer as many questions as possible. For this test, you can gauge your personal order of difficulty based on the topics of the passages or the graphs or the figures that will be there. Okay, so let's practice with a science question. The most efficient way to boost your science score is to pick your order of passages and apply a 3-step approach to the charts. Okay, so step 1 is work the figures. So you want to take a look at the figures and what's there. So I want you to take about 10 seconds and look at the figure and look at the graph and see what information the graph is showing you. Look at the direction of the curves. Take note of the variables and the units that are being used there. Okay. All right. Step 2, work the question. So let's look at the question. It says, based on the figure, as temperature increase, the solubility of mercuric chloride does what? All right. Go ahead and post your answer in the chat. Awesome. I see all the answers coming through. Great job, Yasmin, Kaya, Jordan, Sanaya. Okay, so let's use the process of elimination really quick to look at the answer. All right, so the first one says increases. All right, so we see that all of the curves are going up, so we won't cross that off. We see decreases. We don't see any of the curves going down, so we can eliminate that. Increases, then decreases. We don't see any of that. decreases, then increases. We don't see any of that. All of you were absolutely correct. The answer is A. And so all the charts and graph passages and most of the experiment passages will have figures with them on the science test. The best way to score high is to make sure you work the figures, work the questions, and work the answers using the process of elimination. Great job on that, everyone. Next slide. Okay, on the writing test, you want to make sure, well, first, the writing test is optional and it's 40 minutes to write an essay, to write your essay. The writing test is optional because some schools require it, but most schools don't. So on the writing test, you want to make sure that you pace yourself. The writing test contains one question, but the essay, you only get 40 minutes to answer it. You want to make sure that you plan. Carefully read and consider all of the information that's offered in the prompt. Right, make your argument and main idea clear. Be sure that you explain yourself and that you include lots of details and your examples and your details are meaningful. Review. Take a few minutes before time is called to read over your essay and make sure you correct and make any corrections. Next slide. Here's a few things that you will expect to see on the writing test. The best way to approach the writing test, you want to work the prompt, make sure you identify what's being asked, quickly create your, come up with your perspectives, identify the perspectives in the writing prompt, gather your own perspective, and make sure you consider what's being shared with you in the prompt, because that information is very, very imperative. Okay, now that we have shared strategies on the SAT and the ACT, which do you prefer? The chat section share if you are planning to still take just ACT, the SAT, or if now you think that you can master both. And while you all are doing that, once you decided if you're going to take both tests or if you're going to take one, choose a resource that can, so that you can have great practice and so that to ensure that you are prepared to take either test or both tests that you decide to choose from. Thank you all so much for your interaction during this session. You all performed well, and I appreciate all of your participation. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Sandra for our wrap-up.
Thank you again to our facilitators, Mrs. Bullock and Mrs. James, for a very informative presentation. So let's everyone please give them a virtual round of applause for that presentation. And I hope that you all have come away with a greater appreciation for the standardized tests, the SAT and the ACT, and their overall importance in not only the college admissions process, but also as a gateway for you to receive potential scholarship awards. We encourage you to use these tips that were presented this evening and practice them in order to master taking these tests. A lot of information was presented this evening, so we know that there may be some questions. So we ask that you please utilize the chat box to place any questions that you may have for our presenters this evening, as they will be addressing them later on in the session. And I would like to again pause to thank our sponsoring chapters for this webinar series: Gamma Delta Omega, Gamma Gamma Omega, Lambda Omega, Lambda Omega Omega, and Psi Psi Omega chapters of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And we would like to acknowledge any members of the Divine Nine who may be on the webinar this evening. If you can shout out your organization and your chapter in the chat box so that we can acknowledge you this evening, we would appreciate it, and we thank you for joining us. We want to hear back from you. And so we have developed a survey that we would like for all of our participants this evening to please complete. You will receive an email of the survey link at the end of this session. The survey link is also listed on this slide, and at this very moment, the survey link is being placed in the chat box for you to access it right now. So we ask that you please complete the survey because we want to get feedback and we want to know if this session was beneficial to you or not, and if there are areas of improvement that you would suggest that we need to make. Next slide. We hope that you have enjoyed our webinar series thus far and that you will continue to join us for our upcoming sessions. Our next webinar is scheduled for next Thursday, August 6th at 7 p.m. And we will be discussing college funding and scholarship strategies to graduate debt-free. So please mark your calendars. This is going to be an important session because it's not only important to be able to be accepted into college, but you also have to be able to pay for it also. So we invite parents and scholars to attend this session. Subsequent sessions will include essay writing and how to obtain letters of recommendation, which will be held on August 20th. Strategies for seniors on how to apply to college, that will be held on August 27th and is also open to juniors if they wish to attend. And we will be concluding our series during National HBCU Week on September 24th, presenting additional general college strategies and also highlighting our HBCUs. Registration links for all upcoming webinars are listed on the slide, and we encourage you to register for them as soon as possible. This slide lists some useful resources that you are encouraged to utilize as you begin your studies for the SAT and ACT. And as was mentioned during the webinar, this presentation was developed in part using the SAT and ACT reviews published by the Princeton Review. And so links to the ACT are listed there. Links to the College Board, which is a sponsor of the SAT, is also listed there. And there are also a couple of free resources, prep resources that you should utilize. Khan Academy puts out a free prep for the SAT, and there's also a free ACT prep, and that link is also listed there. So please retain this slide and utilize these resources as you prepare to take these tests. If you were not one of the recipients of a complimentary set of books and workbooks that were donated by the sponsoring AKA chapters, you still have an opportunity to obtain them. And you may purchase the books and the associated workbooks at the website listed, which is www.investinothers.com. We encourage you to purchase the books as you begin your studies and as you begin preparing for college. And if you plan to join us for our upcoming webinars, they will also be used as reference materials. So please, we do encourage you to obtain those books. We would now like to address any questions that you may have for our presenters. Again, please place any questions in the chat box for our presenters as they will be addressing them this evening. And I would now turn it over to our chat moderators to facilitate our question and answer period.
Thank you, Dr. Jordan, for sharing that information. We did have one question in the chat that is a common question that we've seen. The question is it necessary to study vocabulary for the SAT? And that question is posed to Ms. Fanny or Ms. Lakita. Ms. Fanny or Ms. Lakita, is it necessary to study for the vocabulary for the SAT?
You're on mute if you're trying to speak.
Okay, we had a little glitch here. The answer is no. You do not need to be familiar with vocabulary words. But what you should be able to do is have some basic reading, be able to read and understand what you're reading. And if you don't know the answer, what a word is asking, then you might just kind of break it down, and you might have to guess on those. So I would say don't spend a lot of time learning vocabulary. Spend your time learning how to answer the questions and being in a timely manner.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Ms. Fanny Bullock. The next question, do you all know of any tutors or resources out there to help prepare for the SAT?
Yes, there are. On our resource slide, you will receive that in your package at the end of this session, and it gives you great information as to where you can go get free information and where you should parents might be willing to pay for. And I think one of the things I forgot to say in my presentation was that, you know, parents will spend money on telephones, cell phones, and we'll spend money on shoes and clothes. But this is probably one of the most important things you can do for your child. If you can afford to send them to organized SAT prep, then you should do that because the benefits will be well worth it in the end. If not, a lot of organizations do offer free SAT, ACT prep, but it's really going to be out to you to get out there and find it out. So seek out these websites of these sorority chapters and the fraternity chapters that are in the chat, and some of them might offer that.
And I would also like to add that if you're really planning to take a prep course, it's always good to take the prep course leading up to your test date. That way the information is still fresh in your mind as you're leading into taking the test.
Awesome. Thank you for that response. I am monitoring the chat and I don't see any additional questions. And so with no additional questions, that will conclude our Q&A for this evening. We definitely thank you for attending our strategies for taking the SAT and ACT webinar. We hope that you enjoyed it and gained some valuable information this evening. You will receive an email with select slides and resources from tonight's webinar. Again, we thank you for joining us and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar on college funding and scholarship strategies next Thursday, August the 6th at 7 p.m.
Thank you.